You're listening to the Ballroom Network. The following program is intended for all audiences. Welcome to the South Burbs Hitmen podcast with your hosts, Joe Mandel, Steven Zimmerman, and Vinnie Parisi. We're bringing you the White Sox coverage you need from the perspective of true Southsiders. Grab your Kaminsky dog with an ice cold beer and meet us in section 155. Everyone get on your feet for your South Burbs Hitmen.
That ball hit deep. Way back. You can put it on the board. Yes. Jimenez in the air. Left field. He's your hero tonight. Thanks, Cubs. Over the head of Jenks. Uribe charges throws. Out! And the White Sox have won the World Series. Alexei! Yes! 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 History! A perfect game by Mark Burley, and what an unbelievable play by 21.
First pitch starts now. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to an emergency podcast edition of South Burbs Hitmen. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mandel. I'm joined, as always, by my White Sox brothers in arms. I'm talking about Steven Zimmerman, who dropped out as soon as I was about to introduce him. And our buddy Vinnie Parisi could not be with us tonight. He is working and doing other things, so we totally understand. But he was kind enough to prepare a short little video for us. But Zim popped back on, so I don't have to play it just yet. Zim knows how to disappear right as I'm introducing him.
I went to say hi and accidentally backed out of the whole thing, so you know. I
was like,
yeah.
Whoop. I did the Midwest. Whoop.
Oh. That's what Pedro Grifol did this morning. He did the whole Midwest and got right the hell out of town.
It was like that scene from The Simpsons where Abe Simpson's walking into like the brothel and Bart Simpson's there, and he puts his hat on, puts it on the rack, walks in, puts it back on, and walks out the door.
That's it. Dude walked into the office this morning, and Getz was like, "Actually, buddy, maybe don't put your stuff down just yet."
Yeah, get out. Long overdue. How he survived this long, I don't know.
I was reading some things about that today. And the general consensus on why he actually lasted so long is because he had to last a certain amount of time in order for a certain amount of his contract not to be had to pay out, basically. So money.
Sure.
Which, surprise, surprise, Jerry's concerned about money at the end of the day, not the performance on the field.
Yeah, and real quick, let's talk about the statement released, the first statement of two. The Chicago White Sox today announced that Pedro Grifol has been dismissed as the club's manager. Not fired, but dismissed. As we all recognize, our team's performance this season has been disappointing on many levels, said Chris Getz, White Sox senior vice president and general manager. Despite the on-field struggles and lack of success, we appreciate the effort and professionalism Pedro and the staff brought to the ballpark every day. These two seasons have been very challenging. Unfortunately, the results were not there, and a change is necessary as we look to our future and the development of our new energy around this team. Grifol, who was hired on November 3rd, 2022, led the White Sox to an 89 and 190 loss record over 1+ seasons at the helm, including a 28 and 89 record in 2024. The White Sox will begin a search for a new manager immediately, with a replacement expected to be announced after the conclusion of the 2024 season. Zim, they gave a little bit too much grace to Pedro in that statement outside of the record torching at the end.
Absolutely.
They gave and I gotta say, interesting caveat at the end about the hiring of a manager. They're going to hire someone at the end of this season
Not after the season, but at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a very interesting caveat. So that tells me that they've already probably got their candidates in mind. I'm sure there's a few on the short list, which we'll probably hear talk about in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm assuming all the good candidates, the top candidates, are going to be, as soon as teams get knocked out of the playoffs, they can sign deals as soon as they're done playing games, right?
Right.
So it tells you that they're not looking at any candidates from any really good teams unless they're going to hold off a little bit after the season.
Right. Yeah, it tells me that La Russa has probably already been advising them about the direction they should go in, or whoever else is on their advisory panel. We just know that he's one of the men there. Maybe Getz already has his eye on somebody within the organization, which I would hope not, because nobody within the organization is worth it to me.
Yeah.
Best case scenario to me in all of this is that Grady Sizemore hits the ground running and the Sox finish the season, 10 games above 500 for the rest of the year or something like that. Because it's the only way they're going to get a half decent manager out of this whole ordeal to me.
100%.
If they end up hiring from outside the organization, that means they'll be paying Pedro Grifol and another manager next season. And Pedro Grifol was already the second highest paid manager in the MLB. Fun fact for a lot of people who didn't know that. He's the second highest paid guy. And yeah, if Sizemore doesn't work out, then that means they're paying two guys next year. Cheap ass Jerry Reinsdorf is going to get even cheaper on the drawstrings, on the purse strings. So we all know what that means as far as like free agency and all that's going to go.
Yeah, and you queued me up perfectly. Before we talk about candidates for the new manager position, let's talk about who is now the new manager and some of the shakeup, the rest of the shakeup in the clubhouse. So here's the other statement. Grady Sizemore named interim manager for the Chicago White Sox. 3 coaching changes also announced, which was a surprise to me. The Chicago White Sox have announced that current Major League coach Grady Sizemore will serve as the team's interim manager for the remainder of the 2024 season. Joining the White Sox Major League coaching staff for the remainder of the season will be Doug Sishin as bench coach, Justin Jershell as third base coach, and Mike Gellinger as assistant hitting coach. The White Sox have relieved coaches Charlie Montoyo, who was the bench coach, Eddie Rodriguez, who was the third base coach, and Mike Tosar, who was the assistant hitting coach, of their duties. Zim, a lot of people highly regarded Charlie Montoyo, who was the bench coach, and expected him to be the interim manager and possibly the next manager of this team.
Yeah.
What in the world is going on in this clubhouse that we got 3 of these guys let go?
I mean, it tells me that the clubhouse problems are real, that this is an organizational failure. This is a problem all the way through and through. This is not just a surface level issue that was as simple as players not performing and coaches not coaching. It went a lot deeper than that. Otherwise, you don't make this move. This clearly says to me that this guy was rubbing people the wrong way in some shape or form. For the third base coach to get caught up in all of this tells me that there's a real personality problem somewhere along the line, whether it was him, not wanting to be there, or whether it was players not wanting him to be there. It's kind of irrelevant, but it does speak volumes because they just recently replaced their third base coach. What was it, last year or 2 years ago, after getting thrown out at home more times than anybody else in the league. So this is an issue that they've already addressed once, and now they have to address again. It tells me there was definitely some sort of personality problem there because, again, there didn't seem to be any performance-related reason for this. And as far as the assistant hitting coach goes, that honestly just stunned me. Why get rid of the assistant and not the hitting coach himself?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Unless, this guy was in charge of day-to-day operation that wasn't getting done, Who knows? Maybe we see the Sox start hitting later in the season now. Maybe some of these kids come up. Maybe this all has to do with a long-term development plan. They know these guys aren't here for the long haul. And so as long as we're cleaning up, let's just do it. Who's to say, to be honest? I'm sure in the next few weeks, if there's anything to be known, it will come out. But more or less, I mean, it's just kind of is what it is. a guy who was lights out against the White Sox for the better part of a decade is now going to be their coach, which is pretty awesome. Because I mean,
Grady
if
Sizemore
anybody
was
knows how to,
awesome, dude.
He was so good against the White Sox in particular too. I mean, 3 straight All-Stars from 06 to 08. Was part of 2 division championships in that time, if I remember right, and played 162 games twice in his career, 2 of them both in that stretch there, which is, I mean, incredible for to have that kind of longevity.
He's a grinder.
It's not an Iron Man sport anymore, and Grady Sizemore was a true Iron Man of his era. So, I mean, he played a 4-game stretch where he missed a grand total of, 8 games, 9 games. That's insane.
Yeah, that's unheard of.
So, but yeah, he was great as a player. Hopefully that translates into his abilities as a coach. He was a center fielder, which is, as I was talking a lot about the last time I was on the show about how catcher sees the field from a different position. Center field does a lot of the same things from the outfield. It's just the opposite side of the field, So they really direct and see a whole lot of what goes on out there. They're in charge of the outfield and for all intents and purposes, the middle of the infield too. So
absolutely.
Definitely a smart player. An Iron Man, like we've already said, and somebody who I think comes in very well respected. That's something that I don't think Grifol had from the very beginning. He didn't have anybody's respect. Nobody gave a shit. And Sizemore, he's a man to respect. And he's 41 years old. He's pretty close in age to a lot of these guys. He stopped playing not even a decade ago. So
I'm interested to see the kind of how his press conferences are. I'm sure he's going to be more hard on the team. He's going to be, more of a grinder, which is needed. And before we talk about, what his future looks like and other managers, our buddy Vinny couldn't be on the show tonight. He's got stuff going on, but he was kind enough to send us a little video. So let's real quick see what Vinny's thoughts are on this whole thing. So we'll be right back in a little bit, about 1 minute and 10 seconds. So Vinny, take it away, my friend.
What's up, South Burbs? Hitmen, Vinnie Parisi here. The Chicago White Sox finally fired manager Pedro Grifol. Guy was 100 games under 500. It was hardly all his fault, okay? The dude was handed the worst roster in the league, maybe the worst roster of all time, and they made it worse by trading away a handful of pretty valuable players. You have to be objective and admit it wasn't all his fault, but he certainly didn't get the best out of what he had, and he certainly didn't speak in a way that made you feel ready to be a White Sox fan. Like, you can't imagine playing for him because it doesn't seem like he just motivates you to be the best version of yourself. It was a disaster from the beginning, whether we were able to see it at the time or not. The people who hired him are gone. He's gone. It's time to turn this thing around and get it in the right direction. They can't be this bad forever. Hope everybody enjoys. Now that Pedro Grifol is gone, you have Grady Sizemore. You try to finish this season with the last bit of dignity that you have left. You go into the offseason, you find a way to be at least a little bit better than you were next year. You're not going to be a playoff contender for a long time. You have a lot of development. A lot of new players are needed at multiple different positions. The pitching development hasn't been as terrible as you would think for a team as bad as they are, but you have to forget about this era. You have to move onward and upward if you're the powers that be and the Chicago White Sox. Hopefully they're able to figure it out going forward. Pedro Grifol, the firing him card has been played, and now it's time to move on. We'll see what they're able to do from here. Joe, Zim, take it away from here. Have a good rest of the show. Love you guys. Go Sox.
We love you too, Vinny. And we love that Pedro's gone. And we got our buddy Travis in the chat. What up, Travis? Hey, emergency pod because Pedro, or as we like to say, ding dong, the witch is dead. I thought about calling the show that, and then I was like, They made a pretty good one.
Giving him too much power.
Yeah, I know. I said Pedro no mo, and Zim is like, oh, Pedro over. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Oh, actually, I forgot to lead off the show with the thing you sent me earlier.
Oh, man, I was going to say how fitting that on this, the day the 20th anniversary of Dave Matthews Band dumping a bunch of human excrement all over the city of Chicago, we finally clean up a little bit and get rid of Pedro Grifol.
That's right. The shitter's no longer full, folks. But PZ's got an interesting comment, and we'll get into the manager search here in just a second. But David Ross, would he take his job? I mean, would David Ross want the job? I'm going to say probably not.
I think he would take it if it was offered to him. I don't know. He's a Cubs guy, so I feel like he would have a little bit of internal conflict at first. You know, he'd get over it. He's a professional. If he wanted the job, he'd take it. But I don't know if he'd even be considered, to be honest.
Because David Rossi was he was a player's coach, and he was a hard guy, but he was a little bit of a player's coach. So I don't know if that's the right fit for this organization right now. I think you need a no nonsense.
You need a mentor. That's what this organization needs right now. No nonsense. I don't know. That's what Tony La Russa was, and it didn't work for these guys. And granted, you know, probably 85% of this roster is different players now. But like that doesn't seem to work unless you kind of have an established team already put together, at least from what it seems like. This team, like I say, it feels like they need a mentor. They need somebody to teach them how to be professionals. They know how to be ball players. They don't know how to be a team. They don't know how to be professionals. They don't know how to win. And that's what they need, somebody who can teach them to do. That's why I think Grady Sizemore is actually probably a pretty good fit for this team.
I was just about to say, I mean, he's a guy that knows how to win. He knows about the grind of a season. He knows what you have to do on a daily basis to prepare.
And listen to the teams he played for. He played for Cleveland, Boston, Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay. All organizations that know how to win.
Yep.
And these were the Terry Francona Cleveland years, by the way.
That's another guy we're going to talk about in a minute.
You know, again, he retired in 2015, so been out of the league for a little while, but I don't think that really affects his abilities. He played a veteran role on some of these teams that he was on as well. You know, particularly the Philadelphia teams he was on. You know, and I can't think of guys off the top of my head, but I know those 2014, 2015 Phillies were definitely some younger teams. And with Cleveland as well, you know, he came up with some guys. He came up from 2004 to 2011.
Yeah.
And man, again, off the top of my head, I'm blanking. I know these are, I paid attention more to Detroit and Minnesota during that stretch, to be completely honest. So I don't know Cleveland as well.
Well, and for those of us wondering, you know, what he kind of did after his career when he was hired in the front office of the Indians to be in charge of special advisor to the team's player development department. And then he stepped away from that role to spend some time with his young kids. And then last year, he asked Josh Barfield, who was the former director of player development for the D-backs, about joining the org. All positions were full, but then he took an internship with the general manager of the D-backs for the 2023 season. And then after last year, Barfield became the assistant GM for the White Sox here. And then he recommended Sizemore, who became a member of the coaching staff. And now, look at that. He's our interim manager. Quite a path.
It's funny how stuff like that works out sometimes, but yeah.
So I think Zim and I both feel like he's going to get his shot at the role. If they perform at a better level, if this team is tolerable, if they play fundamentals, if he does, you know, a good job, he's obviously going to be in the running, because I think all of us agree that this team is not going to be competing anytime soon, at least in the next 2 to 3 years. So why bring on a big money manager, right?
Yeah, sorry, Pikachu just woke up in the background there.
I thought I heard that.
Hang on, let me shut this thing up. Sorry. It just woke up when I touched something on my phone. Anyway, I'm really excited. I think that Sizemore, I mean, he's a guy that I've always wanted to see more from. He's a guy he was easy to root for, even though he's on a rival team. Like there's a few of those guys I can think of from that time period. You know, Grady Sizemore was one. Maglio Ordonez is a former White Sox, you know, was always a guy I kind of rooted for. Jim Thome back and forth from Cleveland to Chicago.
Sure.
And Prince Fielder, who I know was more of a Cubs rival being in Baltimore, but he eventually went to Milwaukee, and eventually wound up in Detroit. But yeah, I mean, easy guy to root for. He was, I don't know. I've already said all the reasons I like him. I'm not going to keep harping on the same points.
Yeah, we don't gotta, but
PZ points out, you know, he's got to win now to really get a full-time gig. And I don't think it's impossible for him, to be completely honest. I tell you, I was waiting for the White Sox to finish the series this weekend, but I was going to continue to bet on them to lose every single day. For anybody who's curious, I was going to put this on the show on Monday, and I wound up having a last-minute thing come up, so I wasn't able to. I was betting on the White Sox to lose every single day. I started with the $10 bet and then only bet profits from there on out. So I still have my $10. And I was up over $50 when they finally won, which whatever, you bet what you can afford to lose, right? It was free money. So anyway,
yeah, right.
I was going to resume that cycle. I was going to start with a fresh $10 bet after this Cubs series this weekend. I tell you, now that Grady Sizemore is there, I don't think I'm going to do that.
I tell you what, this team is going to be, I was going to say, don't forget that this team is going to feel more motivated. They're going to feel freedom a little bit because there's obviously that tension. We saw, you know, some of those clips with Pedro and interacting with the bullpen and some of those guys, and you could cut the tension with a knife. So there's going to be a lot of freedom on that field.
Yeah, I think so.
So obviously we know that Sizemore's our guy for the rest of the year, whatever. Let's talk about other candidates. We already talked earlier this couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, that they were rumored to be wanting Skip Schumacher to be the next guy here. Apparently on the outs with the Marlins. I believe he's announced he's parting ways with them after the season. 1 year removed from being the NL Manager of the Year, mind you. Obviously this year's not going according to plan, but their pitching is really, 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 really banged up, and let's be honest, they traded away all their best players, except for Sandy Alcantara, who's coming off of Tommy John. I believe he's still recovering from that. So, Skip is obviously, for me, he'll probably be the top name on the list at the moment. Skip goes on the list. A guy you brought up a few minutes ago who people aren't talking about, but I figure we'll bring him up. Terry Francona, does he come out of retirement to coach this team? It feels like Tony La Russa all over again, right?
To coach this team, no. Does he come out of retirement? Possibly. I could see somebody else luring him out of retirement. I do not see the White Sox being the team that does it.
I agree with you there. I'm just saying, you know, of course, someone's going to bring it up. And let's see. Go ahead.
The one that was thrown out at me by some of my friends when this first came out is Aaron Boone, the current Yankees manager that a lot of people think is going to be out after this season.
I think maybe the White Sox, people think that.
The fans and the players just don't seem to be very fond of him, to be completely honest. That's the only reason they gave me. If he were to be available, do you think the White Sox would go after him?
I mean, maybe. But let's talk here. Let's go back to the statement. The White Sox said that at the end of the season they would be hiring. Does that mean end of the regular season? Does that mean end of the conclusion of the World Series?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Yankees are making a run.
Yeah, I mean, and that's totally fair. They very well could. They're starting to come on at the right time, that's for sure. So, I don't know. The timing's definitely going to play into a lot of it. we're definitely not going to see anything before October. I think
Right.
that's very safe to say. We've got at least 2 months with Grady Sizemore. I really, really do think, especially if they bring up some of the younger players and they look good and they're playing well, Grady could pretty easily win the job. At the same time, it would be very easy for me to see this organization saying, "Hey, you did a great job helping us finish strong. Be sure to put us down as a reference."
Yeah, right.
You know? So I don't know what direction it's going to go from here. I think it's a little too early to honestly think about that. I understand why. Completely understand why we have to touch on it, why we have to discuss it. I just think it's too early to really get a good feel of what's happening here now. Because we still haven't had these first interviews. We still haven't had any press contact other than the release that the 2 releases the White Sox gave today, which were totally out of the blue.
Yeah.
The rumblings were happening a week ago. And then it was, they met with Grifol and decided now's not the right time. Like, what changed? Did he have some kind of escalator that they had to wait until after the first week of August to fire him?
Yeah, right.
I mean, honestly, there might be how many games are left in the season now? How many weeks are left in the season now? There could be some escalator in there that now he's fulfilled, the minimum time period guaranteed on his contract, and they no longer have to eat whatever amount of money,
100%.
So I don't know.
That's an honest.
I'm sure there was something written in there like that. There's no way there wasn't for them not to have fired him months ago. The guy has been an absolute clown show for this organization. He's made a bad organization look worse. It's so good that he's gone because it's the first competent thing that Chris Getz has done since taking over as manager.
Yeah, I concur with you there. So there's an option there. Couple other names on the short list, Zim. The big name being thrown around lately is AJ Pierzynski, which we've talked about. Could see him being a good fit, filling the mentor, but also, no BS role. So he kind of fills both of those.
Something that was brought up to me is that, he's kind of a public figure now. He has his podcast, he has his analysis, he has his occasional appearances on media programs. Like, is he willing to give that up to go manage a team? Is managing a team something he actually wants to do? I know he put out some tweets about, I would consider the job, but it hasn't been talked to me yet or whatever. Maybe it's already a done deal and they're just, for formality's sake, waiting until the end of the season. Could see it both ways.
I mean, I thought it was interesting that the reports saying that the White Sox were strongly considering him came out when they did. They came out right at the start of that losing streak. Like they were probably about 5 or 6 games in. So I think where there's smoke, there's fire. Could be a strong potential there. Sox fans would love it. They'd get their butts in the seats just to see him manage. So I could see that because we don't expect him to compete. So let's put the ex-player who people love as a manager. Maybe. There's another ex-player, though, that's being brought up on other people's lists as well. He's on the list every time there's a managing hire. That would be Ozzie Guillen.
I'm good. To be completely honest, we tried that. We literally just did that with Tony La Russa.
I don't think that's the same thing at all, personally.
It's not, but it is. You know what I mean? Like,
listen, I think it could be fun, but at the same time, it's like if they end up doing the same thing and losing for 2 years, and then Ozzie's gonna get fired again. I love Ozzie. He doesn't have much to work with here, and he's got grandkids. He's got not that some of these guys don't, but he's got the TV gig, man. And I'm sure. Well, I guess the whole new network next year might put things up in the air for him, depending on if they pull folks from from NBC Sports Chicago to go onto the new network. I can't think of what it's called, like Stadium or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's the Bulls, Sox, and Blackhawks have a network coming out next year.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Yeah, we talked about it, and the Blackhawks are really the main selling point for people, it seems like. So it is what it is.
Yeah. We'll see. We got an interesting comment in the chat. Maybe Getz is gone at the end of the season. I don't think they make this move the way they did if Getz is not sticking around.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope you're right, but I just don't see him getting the axe.
You know, it kind of reeks to me of Ryan Pace when he was with the Bears, where they forced him to hire John Fox. He didn't really get to make his own decision. And like it turns out, he didn't make a good decision anyway. But
right.
Because of that, we were stuck with him for longer because we didn't really get to know. So like I feel like that's kind of how the situation was going, because like we heard a lot about them hiring out of the Royals organization before Angelo was even fired.
Right.
You know, I mean, this was well before the season was over. So, not Angelo, sorry, Kenny Williams. My goodness, I'm getting my Bears and White Sox mixed up.
The funny thing is I knew exactly what you meant, and I thought I heard you say the right thing, but
no. we all know where I'm going with all this.
Sure. So yeah, Ozzy, you know, is one of those names that have been floating around, but at the end of the day, I think it's more of just a name on the list. I really think, you know, if we're looking at names, it's between Schumacher and Przinsky at this point. And then you have to put, depending on how things go, Grady Sizemore maybe is in consideration there too, but those are, I think, the three names. Which is why I think they can say the comments that they said about hiring at the end of the season.
Yeah. I get all of that.
Because we know the Marlins aren't making the playoffs.
Right. So, yeah, I guess it kind of depends on where they are in their search already. If they do have these things already sort of put together, but just not official and all that kind of stuff. We'll see what happens next. That's all we can really say at this point. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to hypothesize. But to me, like it's not in my head yet because I want to see how Grady Sizemore does. I'm rooting for this guy. Yeah. To be completely honest, we get our
first chance to do it tomorrow.
You mentioned it earlier today when we were talking about the show about like, you know, we'll talk about potential candidates. I'm like, I don't care yet. I might actually watch some White Sox baseball this weekend. Like that's where I'm at with it all. I'm actually pretty hyped about the interim head coach, which is not something that happens very frequently.
I think we've seen such bad press from Pedro, like handling the press, handling the media, that like now anything that's positive is going to be like, holy shit. So anyway, we talked a lot about this big change. Sox fans, the chat's a little fired up about it, you know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks that this team is going to go on a major run here, but, you know, maybe you could actually win one of the two games against the Cubs. God forbid they sweep them, but then the Yankees come to town and then, boop, party time. But nonetheless, it'll be much more tolerable to watch this team. Watch now they go on another losing streak and they finally set the record now. Zim, that would be the plot twist.
Just rip off like 40 straight to end the year.
With this roster, what's considered success for Sizemore? Well,
500.
I think if he goes 500 or near it the rest of the way, that's considered success for him. And if anything better than that, it's holy shit, this guy is a miracle worker.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens. Like you said, he doesn't have a ton of experience in terms of, like he did a little bit of front office work. He did an internship last year for the D-backs, but then you get put into a coaching position this year on arguably one of the worst teams of all time, and then now all of a sudden you're the manager. Whoa, put on your big boy shoes and let's dance. I'm excited to watch. For the first time all year, actually.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's actually something. So, yeah, I'll definitely be watching something this weekend. We got Bears preseason on the way.
Yes, and will Caleb take a snap? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
I would hope he takes at least a series. I would hope.
They've already announced he's going to play probably the first quarter.
They did?
Yeah, they
must have
mentioned
missed
something
that
earlier today.
In all the White Sox news, I missed that. Did you watch Hard Knocks yet, by the way?
Yeah, of course.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, I watched it on Tuesday when it dropped. It was very good.
And me being a Blues Brothers fan, I lost my mind with them opening the show with She Caught the Katy, which is by far one of my favorite Blues Brothers songs. So good stuff there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, good stuff. We had to do the emergency pod. Thanks to Vinny for getting us a video, even though he couldn't be on the show tonight. We had to put this out and break it down for all you guys. So, maybe White Sox baseball will be a little bit more exciting. But Zim and I got a little pep in our step. So does Vinny. We can actually end the show on a positive note. Hey, maybe they play good this weekend, and then on Monday we don't have to do a fart sound to start the show.
Fingers crossed.
I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, but,
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
With the record they have, I mean, they probably earned the farts the rest of the season anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, that could change, kind of. Not by much.
I found out my niece is a fan of the farts at the top of the show. I heard that my brother-in-law showed it to her, and she was very excited about it. So, hey, if nothing else, we have one fan of the fart at the top of the show.
I mean, I like the fart.
I think we all do, because the team is so bad. It gives us something to look forward to every week.
That's it.
Which is really sad. And I have a telemarketer calling my phone. I just ignored it. Got it. But anyway, Zim, I appreciate you coming on last minute, plan through this emergency podcast.
Of course.
Of course, we had to talk about the firing of Pedro Grifol and the ashes that shall remain. We'll see what happens. But real quick, any quick shout outs?
I mean, not so much this week. It's pretty normal stuff. It's been a great week. I am ready to get to the weekend, though.
Hear you. I hear you there. I'm going to give a shout out to my beautiful wife for carrying our next child. We get to find out tomorrow what it is. We had the big.
That is exciting.
We did have the big ultrasound a couple days ago, and we got the little card we gave to a little local bakery. So we pick up our little mini cake for the two of us, and we'll have a little moment together, my wife and I, tomorrow. So, very excited.
I'm glad you're not doing a big thing. I get wanting to do it between the two of you. I do not understand the big parties, though.
Yeah, me either.
It's just a me thing.
It's a you thing. Your dog is just like my dog. It's just a little squeaky, and you just do the little, and it's just squeaking. It's cute, man. You don't have to mute. It's fine. But anyway, we're excited to find out tomorrow. My daughter will be excited and looking forward to the rest of it all. So on that note, we're gonna get out of here and we'll make it quick. We said we were gonna go 30, we were gonna go 40, but that's all right.
Yeah.
For the South Burbs Hitmen, I'm Joe Mandel. That's Steven Zim Zimmerman. Zim's dog is saying hello as well, and Vinny Parisi is at work, but he was kind enough to give us a video. We'll see you guys on Monday night, maybe with some good news, maybe not. It's going to be fun, much more fun to watch the White Sox now. So as always, no matter what, let's go White Sox, and we'll see you guys Monday night. Go Sox.
Bye.